Chapter 1: When the world was but a whisper of emptiness, the birth of the gods, the Titans, and fate. When the human mind had not yet devised names for the sky. When there was neither dawn, nor wind, nor sea. When even time did not count its endless steps. There existed only something ancient, boundless, incomprehensible. Chaos. But the ancient Greeks did not speak of chaos as disordered ought know. It was the great primordial space, the abyss in which all future worlds slept. There was no light. There was no darkness. Because even darkness had not yet been born, and in this endless depth, Gaia awoke for the first time. The great Earth. She did not appear by anyone's will. She arose of her own accord. As the calm, eternal foundation of all that exists, Gaia was not merely soil or stone. She was the mother of matter, the living heart of the future world, the infinite power of fertility, peace, and ancient knowledge. Imagine her, not as a woman in the familiar form, but as the earth itself, which breathes, feels, gives birth. From herself, Gaia created Uranus, the starry sky. Uranus spread out above her as a boundless vault, covered with twinkling lights, and for the first time, the world was divided into above and below, into sky and earth. Thus was born the first union of the cosmos, the union of earth and sky. Their children became the first rulers of the ancient universe, the Titans. They were not merely gods. They were the forces of the ages, Ophiuchus, the endless waters washing over the world, Hyperion, the ancient light, not yet become the sun, Cous, the axis of celestial contemplation, Crius, the constellations, and celestial cycles, Iapetus, mortality and the limit, and Cronus, the youngest, the most cunning, the most dangerous. But besides the Titans, other children appeared, the Cyclopes giants, with a single eye, in which the primal fire of forges blazed, and the hundred-handed giants, the Hecatonchires, monstrous forces of chaos, whose power was so great that even mountains seemed like dust beside them. And here, ancient history takes its first grim turn. Uranus, looking upon some of his children, was horrified. Perhaps he saw in them not the beauty of strength, but a threat to his own power, and so he imprisoned the Cyclopes and the hundred-handed ones in the depths of Gaia. In the darkest depths, one can imagine the suffering of the earth. A mother, whose children became prisoners, within her very self Gaia suffered. Her silent pain accumulated over the centuries. And then, for the first time in the universe, a conspiracy arose. She forged a sickle from adamantium, a metal without equal, a weapon not of war, but of destiny. She turned to her Titan children, urging them to rise up against their father. But only one answered, Cronus, the silent, one patient, full of ambition. When Uranus once again bent over Gaia, Cronus struck a blow that changed the very fabric of the cosmos. Thus, heaven was overthrown from the drops of Uranus's blood that fell to earth. The Erinyes were born ancient goddesses of vengeance, pursuing crimes of blood, and from the sea, foam rising far from the shore. Aphrodite appeared, an enigma of beauty, desire, and enchanting power. Thus the ancient Greeks revealed a wondrous truth, even from destruction. Something beautiful can be born. Cronus became the new ruler of the world, but the power of the gods never comes without fear, and one day, a prophecy, like a silent poison, seeped into his mind. One of his children would overthrow him just as he had overthrown his father. Fear, the oldest weakness of even the most powerful. Every time Rhea, Cronus's wife, gave birth to a child, he devoured it. Thus disappeared Hestia, Demeter, Hera hates Poseidon, not out of cruelty for cruelty's sake, but out of a desperate attempt to stop fate. But the myths of Greece remind us time and again, fate cannot be destroyed, it can only be delayed. When Zeus was born, Rhea decided to trick Cronus. She wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes, and Cronus, blinded by fear, swallowed it, and the infant was secretly carried away to the island of Crete. There, in a hidden cave, amid rock, wind, and the silence of the stars, grew the one who would one day become the thunder of the heavens, the Curetes warrior. Guardians struck their spears against their shields, so that Cronus would not hear the infant's cries. The goat Amalthea nursed him with her milk, and the very air of Crete seemed to guard this secret. Zeus grew, not just as a child. He grew as Phaetus' answer to the tyrant's fear. When the time came, he returned, not only with strength, but also with wisdom. Through cunning, he forced Cronus to return the children he had swallowed. And then, from the darkness of the past, his brothers and sisters emerged. Thus, the family that had been tried to be erased was whole again, and the Titanomachi began. A great war that lasted 10 years. The sky split apart. The seas boiled, the mountains crumbled, the Cyclopes forged lightning bolts for Zeus. Poseidon received a trident. Hades a helmet that hid him even from the gaze of fate. Hundred-handed giants hurled boulders at the Titans, as if stars were falling to the earth, and in the end, Cronus fell. The Titans were cast into Tartarus, abyss deeper than death itself. After their victory, the three brothers divided the world. Zeus took the sky, Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld. Thus was Olympus born. But even after becoming king of the gods, Zeus did not destroy the primary law of the ancient world. Order is always born of chaos. But chaos never disappears completely. It sleeps, it waits, and lives in the shadows of every great kingdom. That is precisely why the myths of ancient Greece are not merely fairy tales. They are a mirror of the human soul, about the fear of losing power, about the cycle of generations, about how children surpass their parents, and about how even the immortals cannot escape their fate. Now, when the stars of ancient Uranus slowly twinkle above boundless Gaia, when the distant Titans sleep in Tartarus, and Zeus's thunder rolls quietly beyond the horizon, you can take a deep breath and move on, because ahead lies the story of Prometheus, the one who dared to give fire to humanity. Chapter 2: Prometheus, the Titan who stole the gods' fire. When the world finally settled down after the great war of the Titans, when Olympus rose above the clouds like a golden pinnacle of new power, when Zeus, the Lord of Thunder, ascended the throne of the heavens, it seemed that order had been established forever. But even in the age of the gods, there were those who saw beyond power, those who noticed not only the grandeur of Olympus, but also the suffering of those who lived below. Humans, in those ancient times, humanity was weak. Not the humanity that builds cities, crosses seas, or masters metal. No. People were fragile creatures, wandering through forests, cold and darkness. They knew no crafts, did not understand the movement of the stars, did not know how to protect themselves from winter. And most importantly, they had no fire. Night was a true realm of terror for them. When the sun disappeared below the horizon, the cold came, and with it predators, fear, and helplessness. They trembled in their caves, gazing into the black void, and did not know that somewhere high above, on Olympus, a power shone that could change everything. But among the Titans, there was one who viewed humanity differently, Prometheus. His name is often translated as the Forethinker. The one who sees the future, Prometheus was unlike many other ancient beings who sought only power. He possessed a rare gift-compassion. According to myth, it was Prometheus who created humankind. He took clay, mixed it with water, and fashioned mortals in the image of the gods, and the goddess Athena breathed life into them. Thus, humankind became a dual being, with a body of earth, but with a spark of heaven. And Prometheus loved his creation. He saw in people not weakness, but potential. He knew one day they would be able to rise above their helplessness. But there was one prohibition. Zeus did not want people to become too powerful for the supreme god. The order of the world was built on separation. The gods dash above, humans dash below, and so fire, a symbol of strength, knowledge, craftsmanship, and independence, remained only with the immortals. Fire was more than just heat. It was the secret of blacksmithing, the secret of cooking, the secret of smelting metal, the secret of light in the night. In fact, fire was the beginning of civilization, and Prometheus set out to do the impossible. He rose up not with a sword, not with an army, but with a choice. According to legend, he ascended to Olympus, to where the gods' flames burned in the sacred halls. Some tales say he lit a reed stalk from Helios's sun chariot. Others that he secretly stole a spark from Hephaestus's forge, but the meaning remained the same. He stole fire from the gods. Imagine that moment. Not just theft, but the greatest act of defiance. In all of Greek mythology, a titan descends to the people, and for the first time, a flame flares up in human hands. Light cuts through the night, the cold retreats. Wild beasts are afraid to approach. Food becomes different. Metal begins to obey the hands, and along with fire, people receive something more. Hope. They were no longer completely helpless, but Zeus found out, and his wrath was terrible for the king of Olympus. This was not merely a violation of an order. It was a challenge to the established order. Prometheus's punishment was to serve as an eternal warning. He was chained to a rock in the distant Caucasus, mountains at the edge of the world, where the wind is cold and loneliness is endless. Every day, a huge eagle flew to him, Zeus's sacred bird, and tore at his liver. Why the liver, specifically? For the ancient Greeks, the liver was considered the seat of life force, and at night, the wound would heal, only for the torment to begin again in the morning, day after day, century after century. It was not merely punishment through pain. It was endless suffering, but a profound mystery lies hidden within this myth. Prometheus suffered, but he had no regrets. He knew what he had sacrificed himself for. His torment became the price of human progress. Some ancient philosophers saw in Prometheus a symbol of humanity itself, the quest for knowledge, the breaking of boundaries, the willingness to suffer for the sake of the future. But the story does not end with suffering alone. There was a prophecy. Prometheus knew a secret capable of one day influencing even the fate of Zeus. He knew what union could lead to the birth of a being surpassing the Thunderer himself, and so, despite the chains, Prometheus retained his strength. Not physical, but the strength of knowledge. In some versions of the myth, after many ages, the hero Heracles, in the course of his exploits, slew the eagle and freed Prometheus. Thus, Even Zeus eventually allowed this suffering to come to an end. Why? Perhaps because even the power of the gods cannot completely halt progress. That is precisely why the myth of Prometheus has survived for millennia. This is a story not only about the gods, but also about the price of progress, about how knowledge often requires courage, that progress involves risk, and that sometimes the greatest gifts come through sacrifice. When you look at the flame of a candle today, at the light of a lamp, at the sparks of a bonfire, an ancient memory still whispers the old legend that once this light was stolen from the gods themselves, and somewhere in the silence of the ancient mountains, under the cold sky, a titan who loved humanity more than his own freedom looked through the ages and knew that his suffering was not in vain. And now, while the warm golden flame shimmers in the dark and the ancient Olympus lurks behind the clouds, there is a new mystery, the story of the first woman, of the mysterious gift of the gods, and the vessel that forever changed human fate, the history of Pandora. Chapter 3, Pandora, the secret of the forbidden vessel and the birth of human troubles. When the fire of Prometheus lit up the earth, when people first stopped being afraid of the night, when the power of the craft, the warmth, and the hope burst into their hands. The world has changed, but with this change, Olympus has changed. Zeus, the Lord of Heaven, saw more than the joy of mortals. He saw the threat. People were getting smarter, stronger, freer, and the liberty of the mortal has always worried those who rule from above. Zeus's anger did not cool down even after the punishment of Prometheus. No, now his will has turned not only against the Titan, but against humanity itself. However, the punishment conceived by the king of the gods should not have looked like lightning or like war. She had to come otherwise, quiet, fine, irresistible. So began the story of Pandora. Her name meant gifted by all, and that name was no accident. Zeus ordered Hephaestus, the great blacksmith of Olympus, to create a new creature from clay and water. Not a person, but something special. The figure was carved with extraordinary care, delicate, beautiful, charming. When the form was completed, each god of Olympus put his gift into it. Athena bestowed wisdom, artistry, and finesse. Aphrodite, the charm, beauty, and power of attraction. Hermes, speech, flexibility of mind, and hidden cunning. Apollo, music and light. Hera is dignity. Herith is a grace. Thus appeared the first woman in the ancient Greek myth, not just mortal, the design of the gods to Pandora. But behind this magnificence lay a secret. Together with her, Zeus prepared a special vessel. It was later often referred to as a box. But the ancient texts spoke more of a large inscribed piphos, a clay vessel. And this is where one of the most mysterious parts of the myth begins. What was inside? Not gold, not jewels, not immortality. There were disasters inside. Asterisk, asterisk. Disease, sadness, hard work, old age, envy, gore, suffering, all that humanity has never fully known before, according to ancient beliefs. Before this time, people lived closer to the Golden Age, without knowing so many torments. Pandora was sent to Epimetheus, Prometheus' brother, and there's a big detail. The name Epimete means thinking after. If Prometheus saw it coming, then Epimete realized it too late. Prometheus forewarned his brother, never accept gifts from Zeus. But when Pandora appeared, how could one renounce the perfection created by the gods themselves? Epimetea accepted her. Thus the ancient myths recall again. Even knowing the warning, the heart and curiosity are often stronger than the mind. Things were quiet for a while. Pandora lived among people carrying the beauty, but there was always a vessel. Nearby, sealed, mysterious, prohibited, and, perhaps, this is where one of the most eternal human motives lurks: curiosity. Why can't it be opened? What's up? Why does mystery exist? Hermes, who gave Pandora not only the speech, but also the inner mobility of thought. As if he had put this question into her beforehand. And one day, the lid was raised in the same moment. The world changed. Diseases broke out of the vessel, like dark winds, sorrow.like. A shadow, anxiety, like a whisper. Hard work as an inevitability, aging, like. The sand of time, all the ills that had been hidden before were scattered across the land. People tried to close up and hide, but it was late. Was once released, into the world can no longer be. Fully restored, Pandora shut the vessel in horror, and then there was silence. There's only one left at the bottom, hope, ice, and here the myth becomes especially profound. Why is hope still there? Was it a salvation for humanity? Or, conversely, the final illusion? Ancient philosophers argued for centuries. Asterisk. Some believed that even in the midst of suffering, people were left with the greatest gift, the ability to believe for the best. Others believed that hope could also be a challenge, because it is what keeps a person going even in pain. But perhaps the ancient Greeks understood something more subtle, that life is never just about suffering, but never with happiness. And while there is hope, man is not broken definitively. The story of Pandora is often seen as a tale of woe, but it is actually a myth about human nature, about curiosity, about the choice, about the consequences, and that even after mistakes, there is a chance to move forward. Interestingly, Pandora was not the incarnation of evil. She did not open the vessel of hatred. She did what many people do to a secret. She wanted to know, and in this, the myth becomes almost a mirror of all civilization, for mankind has opened forbidden doors for centuries. Exploring the undiscovered.wrong.liberis. New powers, and then learns to live with the consequences. So the ancient history of Pandora becomes not only a tale of the past, a warning about the future, when the night is quiet, when the lights go out. When a person is alone with their thoughts, he still lives in a world where the vessel was once opened, but somewhere deep, even in the most difficult times, it remains a small, warm, almost invisible spark, hope, and maybe it is what makes humanity stronger than any calamity. And now, while the ancient vessel rests in the shadow of history, as long as the whisper of Olympus is barely heard through the ages, there is a new story of a young man who dared to look into the eyes of a monster, about the mirror shield, about the wing sandals, and of the gargoyle whose gaze turned alive into a stone, the story of Perseus and Medusa, asterisk. Chapter 4. Perseus and Medusa, the mirror shield. The gaze of death and the mystery of the Gorgon, when the world has already known the fear of the gods, when people learned to live among the calamities left behind by Pandora, when heroes were just beginning to appear among the mortals in ancient Greece. A story was born in which fate, prophecy, and horror were intertwined. This is the story of Perseus, but like many of the great myths of Iliad, it doesn't start with a hero. It begins with a prediction. In the city of Argos reigned King Acrisius, powerful, rich, but, like many rulers of ancient legends, he was most afraid not of enemies. The future, the oracle foretold to him a terrible thing. One day he will die at the hands of his grandchild. not a son, not a rival, and a grandchild, and again the ancient Greek myth recalls the principal law of fate. The harder a person tries to avoid prophecy, so he is closer to his execution. Akri had a daughter, Danae, so that she would never have children. The king ordered her to be imprisoned in a bronze tower, or, according to some versions, an underground piece where no man has penetrated. It was supposed to stop fate, but the ancient gods seldom obeyed human fears. Zeus saw Danae and appeared to her in a not ordinary form, and the golden rain is a symbol of heavenly power, mystery, and divine intervention. Was Perseus, born semi-god, son of the mortal and sovereign Olympus. When Acrisius heard of the baby, fear was greater than blood, but he did not dare to kill the child directly. Instead, Danae and little Perseus were placed in a wooden chest and were thrown into the sea. The waves became their deer, fates feeding the sea under. Poseidon did not swallow them. The trunk was brought to the island of Seraph, where mother and child were rescued by fishermen, deities. Thus Perseus grew up away from the throne, not like a prince, as a young man who had yet to discover his role, but the danger has come again through power. The king of the island, Polydectes, wanted to get rid of Perseus and devised an almost impossible task: bring the head of Medusa. And here begins one of the darkest mysteries of Greek mythology. Who was Medusa? Today, she is often portrayed as a monster with snakes instead of hair, but the ancient legends hold a more complex image. Once upon a time, Medusa was, according to some myths, a beautiful girl associated with the Temple of Athens. But after the tragic events, the goddess turned her into a gorgon. Thus Medusa became a creature whose gaze turned anyone to stone. Her face became the embodiment of horror. Her hair is like a live snake. Her presence is death, together with the two immortal Gorgon sisters. She lived on the edge of the world, where fog, night, and ancient fear were joined. And yet Medusa was mortal. That is why Perseus's mission, while seemingly hopeless, was theoretically possible. But how do you defeat the one you can't look at? Here the hero was helped by the gods. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, gave him a polished shield that shone like a mirror. Hermes gave the bent sword. The nymphs were gifted with winged sandals. Sumac, for Gorgon's head, and Hades' helmet that gives invisibility. So, Perseus did not just go on the road, a journey between life and death. First, he had to find the gray, ancient old women who had one eye and one tooth for 3. Perseus's cunning got there. And only then did I learn the way to the Gorgons. This episode is especially important. Greek heroes won not only by force, but also with a mind. When he reached the Gorgon's lair, Perseus saw sleeping beasts, but not directly. He looked only at the reflection of the shield. This is one of the most symbolic moments in a myth. Sometimes a direct look at the horror is harmful, but the reflection allows you to conquer fear. Be careful, quiet. Under the leadership of Athens, Perseus cut off Medusa's head, and in that moment, something amazing happened. From the blood of Medusa was born Pegasus, a winged horse, symbol of inspiration and Hrisar, even in the death of the beast. The ancient Greeks again showed a strange truth. Out of horror a miracle can occur. The sisters of Medusa have awakened, but the helmet of invisibility saved Perseus. He's gone, however. Medusa's head remained strong even after death. Her gaze still turned alive into stone on the way back. Perseus met Andromeda, a princess bound to a rock as a victim of a sea monster, armed with Gorgon's head. He defeated the monster and saved her, so the hero not only survived, but also became a savior. Later, Perseus returned to Seraph and used the power of Medusa against the cruel Polydect, whoever sent him to his death. Sam met a stone destiny, but the main prophecy was still, and, as always in Greek myths, it has been fulfilled. Years later, during sports competitions, Persedaxidis struck Acrisius, not out of revenge, not out of malice, by the inevitability of fate. Thus the ancient Greeks once again asserted, you can't run from fate, even if you hide in the towers, even if you throw your children into the sea, even if we build walls against the future. Perseus's story is not just a myth about the monster. This is a tale of coming of age, about overcoming fear, the power of reason, about the fact that a true hero doesn't look directly horrified and finds a way to understand him and win. A Medusa, it remains one of the most mysterious images in mythology, not just a monster, but a symbol of the power of horror, pain, transformation, and forbidden gaze. Even today, her image remains alive on the shields, in art, in secret symbols, as a reminder. Some fears destroy, but if you look wisely, even these can be turned into force. And now, when Perseus disappears beyond the horizon in flip-flops, when the shield of Athens no longer reflects Gorgon's view, and the stars above Alad are quiet again, there is a new story of a young man who tried to find his way through the maze, about King Minos, about the thread that became a symbol of salvation, and the monster hidden in the heart of stone darkness, the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. Chapter 5: Theseus and the Minotaur, a labyrinth of fate, lifeline, and monster's heart. When the heroes of the ancient world had just begun to make their way through fear, when Perseus had become a legend, when Olympus continued to watch the dead from cold heights, on the island of Crete, surrounded by azure waters and sea winds, stood one of the most mysterious realms of antiquity, the kingdom of Minos. Crete in Greek myths was not just an island. This was the place of ancient power, sea power, the secret, and power closely linked to the gods. Tsar Minos, son of Zeus himself and of Europe, ruled majestically. His palaces shone with wealth. His ships roamed the sea. His name inspired respect. But, as often happened in ancient tales, it was pride that started the tragedy. To confirm his claim to the throne, Minos asked Poseidon to send a sign, a sacred bull from the depths of the sea, and the god of the seas heard, out of the foam. A blindingly beautiful white bull appeared, so majestic that its radiance seemed almost unearthly. Minos was to sacrifice him to Poseidon, but, captivated by the beauty of the animal, he decided to keep the bull for himself, replacing it with another, a mistake. Born of greed, Poseidon noticed the deception, and the ancient gods seldom forgave such a thing. So the curse fell on Minos' house, and soon a creature was born into the royal family, which became one of the most famous monsters of mythology. Minotaur, half-human, half-bull, with the body of a huge, fierce creature, and a mind torn between the beast of nature and the dark destiny. This creature was not just a monster, it became a living symbol of the distorted order, the consequence of pride to errors, and divine punishment to conceal the horror. Minos ordered the great master Daedal to create a labyrinth. But the labyrinth was not just a prison. It was an architectural embodiment of despair. Corridors leading nowhere, twists inside the twists, stone hinges, enclosed spaces. A place where not only the path was lost, but also hope. Even the word maze remains. A symbol of human confusion 1,000 years later. And in his heart lived the Minotaur. But the tragedy of Crete was not limited to an island. King Minos' son died one day in Athens, and the angry ruler demanded a terrible tribute. Every 9 years, Athens was to send 7 young men and 7 girls to Crete, the labyrinth, where an almost inevitable doom awaited them. It was not just a tribute, it was a fear ritual, a reminder of the power of Crete, and Athens lived under the shadow of this terror. Until Theseus showed up, the son of King Aegae, a youth in which nobility, courage, and the very characteristic of great heroes, the willingness to enter into darkness for others, were combined. When the time came for a new victim, Theseus himself took his place among the doomed, not as a prisoner, like someone who intends to end a nightmare. Before sailing, he promised his father, if he returns alive, he will change the ship's black sails to white ones. This moment, almost silent among great events, will later become one of the most sad details of the myth in Crete. The fate of Theseus was with Ariadne, daughter of Minos, and here the myth again shows how even in the darkest stories, a subtle force appears that can change everything. Not a crude power and help, trust, and intelligence. Ariadne saw Theseus and decided to help. She gave him a ball of yarn, simple thing, but became one of the greatest symbols of salvation in world culture. Thread of Ariadne. Theseus tied her to the entrance of the labyrinth, and he stepped inside. Imagine that. Cold walls, silence, echo of footsteps, dark turns, the realization that somewhere ahead lies a monster. The labyrinth in this myth is not just a place. This is the image of human fear. Every turn is a doubt. Every dead end is a mistake. Every shadow is an unknown. But Theseus went further, and finally, he reached the center. I know you are huge, fear born of a curse, the being of strength, pain, and eternal imprisonment. The battle of Theseus with the Minotaur is described differently in ancient versions. Sometimes with a sword, sometimes with bare hands, asterisk. But the bottom line remains. Man faced the monster. He won, not just by force, but by will. Theseus killed the Minotaur, and thanks to the thread, Ariadne found a way back. Thus the ancient Greeks left behind an important symbol. Defeating a monster is not enough. We still need to get out of our own maze. Theseus saved the young men and women of Athens and left Crete with Ariadne. But beyond that, the me becomes more complet on these lunge. Naxos Ariadne was left, in various versions, at the will of the gods, fate or Theseus himself. This is one of those episodes where myths do not provide easy answers. Even heroes are not always perfect. And then tragedy strikes. On her way home, Theseus forgot to change the black sails. King Aegae saw the ship from a distance. He thought his son was dead. He threw himself into the sea in despair. Since then, legend has it, the sea has been called the Aegean, so even the greatest victory did not save the pain of loss. The story of Theseus is not merely a tale of battle with a beast. It's a myth about growing up, about fear, about finding a path, the price of forgit fuelingus, and that even the winner does not always avoid tragedy. The labyrinth, he remained the eternal symbol, not just the stone structure, but the inner path of man, because every man meets his Minotaur one day. with my fear, with its darkness, and everyone needs their own. Ariadne thread wisdom, memory.love, or hoped not to get lost, and now, when the walls of the labyrinth dissolve in the ancient fog, when Theseus' footsteps fade, when the waves of the Aegean Sea are gently swaying ships, new wings are rising ahead, the story of the great master, his bold son, the sun to heights and falls, the story of Daedalus and Icarus, ***. Chapter 6, Daedalus and Icarus, wings of wax, call of the sky, and fall to the sun when the labyrinth of Crete had already concealed in its stone depths the rebukes of the Minotaur, when Theseus left, when the secrets of King Minos became heavier than his own power. In the heart of the Cretan palace lived a man whose name survived centuries not by virtue of his throne, thanks to reasoned Daedalus in the myths of ancient Greece. He was no warrior, not a king, not a half-god. He was a master, but the word master is hardly able to convey the meaning of his image. Daedalus was considered the greatest inventor of his time, architect, sculptor, engineer, artist, a man whose hands seemed to understand the secrets of the form as deeply as the gods understood the world's structure. His statues were said to be so perfect that they seemed alive, like they're about to make a movie but an architectural puzzle that symbolizes despair. But a great talent is rarely fully unleashed. Alongside power, after the escape of Theseus and the death of Minotaur, Minos realized the terrible. Whoever built the labyrinth knew his secrets too, which means was dangerous. Minos could not allow the secrets of Crete to leave the island, and therefore Daedalus, together with his young son Icarus, became a prisoner, not necessarily in a prison with bars, but on an island surrounded by the sea and the kings. Crete has become a golden cage. The sea closed the way, the ships were controlled, the land was protected. There seemed to be no way out, but it is here that the true nature of Daedalus is revealed. When all the earth's paths are closed, the genius seeks a path where others do not even look. In the sky, watching the birds, their feathers, the movement of the wind, Daedalus contemplated the impossible. If a man cannot walk the earth and cannot sail by sea, he will try to take off. Thus was born one of the most famous ideas of all mythology, artificial wings. Daedalus collected bird feathers, big and small, connected them by threads. I waxed. It wasn't just an escape. It was an attempt by man to get closer to the secrets of nature, to imitate the freedom once enjoyed only by birds and gods, for myself and for the son, Icarus, young, curious, full of excitement. In myths, Icarus is neither a villain nor a fool. He is the incarnation of youth, the age when the world seems endless, when heights attract greater caution before the flight. Daedalus gave his son instructions: don't fly too low, otherwise the sea moisture will deaden the wings. But don't climb too high, otherwise the heat of the sun will melt the wax. This was not just a technical warning. This is one of the oldest lessons about measure, that extremes are dangerous, that freedom requires reason, that excitement must go hand in hand with understanding limits. And now the moment has come. Father and son took to the air. Imagine that. Man bound to the ground for centuries. For the first time I feel the wind under my wings, the sea below, islands far away, clouds nearby. It was the triumph of reason, the victory of invention, the dream that became a movement. They were flying, the fishermen, looking up, may have taken them for gods. The shepherds were frozen. The world below remained the same. But things have changed for Icarus. The flight is drunk. Freedom can be more beautiful than any land. Icar felt more than just salvation. He felt excited. He got up. Higher, higher. Maybe he wanted to touch the glow. Check limits. To feel how far a person can go. And it is here that the myth becomes eternal. The sun in the Greek world, it was not just a star. It was a symbol of strength, light, divine order. When Icarus got too close, the wax began to melt, at first imperceptibly, then faster. The feathers have weakened, the wings fell apart, and a young man who had just been almost part of the sky started to fall from the height of my dreams. At sea, thus ended the story of Icarus, the sea that received. It was later called Icaria, but the ancient Greeks never created myths just for tragedy. What's the point? At first glance, a warning against hubris, but the story goes deeper. Icarus was not evil. He did not seek to destroy. He wanted more. That is why the image of Icarus survived millennia, not only as a symbol of error, but also as a symbol of audacity. Humanity, too, constantly strives for higher things, to new knowledge, to discoveries, to the sky, to the stars, and sometimes pays the price. And Daedalus, having lost his son, went on. His sorrow was a reminder. Even the greatest mind is not always able to protect those he loves, if freedom trumps wisdom. This myth has become one of the most universal in history. It's about parents and children, about the instructions, about youth, about the risk, the price of ambition, and perhaps the main question: should a man strive for heights if there is a risk of falling? Ancient Greece did not give a direct answer, but history itself has preserved the name of Icarus forever, which means even a fall can become immortal if there is an aspiration to the sky. Behind it, when planes pass the clouds today, when the rockets rise up to the stars, when a man tries again and again to overcome limits, the shadow of Icarus still flies by. Reminder: dream high, but remember the sun. And now, as the wax feathers slowly circle over the ancient sea, when Daedalus disappears beyond the horizon, when the sky belongs to birds, again, there is a new story of a singer whose music could stop the rivers of love, descended into the realm of shadows, and about trying to get back what was lost. The story of Orpheus and Eurydice. Chapter 7. Orpheus and Eurydice. The song before which death was inclined. When the ancient heroes fought monsters, when the kings were building labyrinths, when some sought power and others immortality, there was another way among them, not the path of the sword, not the path of power, not the way of trickery, the path of music. In the world of ancient Greece, music was considered more than just art. She was the magic of order, a piece of space, the invisible thread between a person's soul and the mysteries of the universe. There was no mortal musician greater than Orpheus. His name is surrounded by an almost mystical glow, son of Mususum legends. Calliope, patron of the epic song, Orpheus had a gift that seemed almost impossible when he touched the string of his lyre. The world changed. The trees leaned closer, the rivers slowed down, the wild beasts forgot their rage, even the stones. Legend has and should move from by his mutin. Entertain, it penetrated the essence of existence. To the ancient Greeks, he was not just a singer. To those who understood the hidden vibrations of the world, but even the greatest gifts do not. Protect against pain. Orpheus once met Eurydice. Her myths speak softer, quiet, like spring. Breathing like a light that needs no loud words. She was not just a lover for him. A harmony for which even music has gained new meaning. Their union felt like a blessing. But Greek myths rarely allow happiness to remain untested for long. Fate intervened suddenly. Eurydice is dead, in ancient versions. The cause was a snake hidden in the grass. Surprise, momentarily, and life slipped away. Thus, Orpheus was faced with something before which almost everyone is powerless, with loss, and here begins one of the most sad and beautiful stories in all mythology. Orpheus did not accept death as the end. He did what almost no mortal dared. He decided to descend into the underworld, to Hades. For the Greeks, it was not just a place of punishment. The underworld was a kingdom of shadows, area of silence, where the gloomy rivers flowed, Styx, Aedo, where Heron carried souls through the dark waters, where the three-headed Cerberus guarded the gate. This was the boundary between the living and the departed, and Orpheus stepped in not with a gun, with a lyre. Imagine. This path, shadows stone. Silence. Cold. But in this darkness music is playing. Orpheus played. Then the impossible happened. Heron stopped. Cerberus resigned himself. The flower has weakened. Even the harsh judges of the dead listened. When Orpheus reached the throne of Hades and Persephone, he did not demand, did not threaten. He sang it about love, about the pain, about memory, about the void. Without Eurydice, this is one of the strongest images of ancient culture, art capable of touching even death. Hades. Usually unbending, agreed, Eurydice was allowed to return. But on one condition, Orpheus must go first, and Eurydice follow him, and he must not look back until he comes to the surface, never at first glance. The condition seems simple, but myths know the weaknesses of the human heart. The journey back has been long. Dark paths, the whisper of doubt, silence. Orpheus went forward, but I didn't hear her steps. Was she following him? Have not his gods deceived him? Has she disappeared again? Doubt, the same doubt that is familiar to everyone, and then a light appeared in front of me. Almost freedom, almost a salvation, and at the last moment Orpheus looked around, just one movement, but it was enough. Eurydice has disappeared, not in anger, not in a scream. Quiet. How? The fog goes. Forever, this moment made the myth of Orpheus immortal. Because it's not about her monster, not about the battle. It is about human nature, about love, about hope, the fear of losing, and how even a moment of doubt can change fate. After that, Orpheus was no longer the same. Some myths say that he turned his back on ordinary life, wandered. He sang sad songs. His music got even deeper, because it was not just love that lived in a now, but also loss in the also, that went to death. As the legends say, his head and lyre continued to sing, swimming in the waters. A symbol that true art does not disappear. Why has this myth survived millennia? Because Orpheus is the image of anyone who tries to recover what has been lost, who wanted another chance, who walked through the darkness for love. Perhaps the point is not defeat, Orpheus did almost win death, almost, but the myth is, sometimes the toughest challenges are not strength. And trust, even when it's scary, go. Even when you don't hear an answer, when the music plays at night, when the old melody brings back memories. When the heart cherishes those who can no longer be returned. Orpheus. Shadow is still near, he recalls. Love can even lead through the realm of shadows, but doubt can destroy the path at the very exit. And now, when the last notes of the lyre are dissolved in the underground silence, when the waters of Styx become immobile again, when Eurydice disappears among the shadows, the story of the greatest hero, Ellida, rises about power, about the crazy trials, about the monsters of the exploits that have become a legend, the story of Heracles. Chapter 8: Heracles, the 12 deeds, the power of death, and the path through the impossible. When the music of Orpheus is quiet in the shadows, when the ancient heroes have proved that courage can challenge monsters, when Olympus continued to guide, test, and sometimes break the fate of men, on earth appeared one whose name became almost synonymous with incredible power, Eurystheus. But his story, like many of Greece's great myths, does not begin with triumph from the enmity of the gods. He was the son of Zeus and the mortal woman of alchemy from birth. His fate was intertwined with heavenly power and human vulnerability. But where Zeus was, often there was also a Hera, queen of Olympus, whose jealousy and myths became the driving force behind many tragedies. She couldn't hit Zeus directly, but his descendant may have followed him, so the infant Heracles was targeted in his cradle. According to legend, two huge snakes were sent to him. Imagine this scene: night, silence, cradle, and two deadly creatures sliding to the child. But the baby did not cry. He grabbed the snake with his hands and smote them, so even before the first words, the world saw a sign. This child will not be ordinary, but power does not mean freedom from suffering. Hera continued to pursue him, and one day, in her sheer madness, led to a great tragedy. Having realized what had been done, Hercules was broken not by body, with the soul. It was then that his journey of redemption began. The oracle commanded him to serve King Eurystheus and perform 12 almost impossible tasks. Thus were born the famous 12 deeds of Heracles. These were not just tests of strength. Each deed symbolized the struggle against chaos, external and internal. The first was the German lion, the beast with a skin that was not penetrated by a weapon. Heracles understood. The usual methods are useless. He strangled the lion with his bare hands. After that, his skin became a symbol of the hero himself, invincibility, obtained through direct confrontation with fear. Then there was the Lernaean Hydra, a multi-headed monster whose head grew to instead of one cut off. That was another lesson. Some problems cannot be solved by brute force alone. They demand strategy, with the help of fire. Heracles stopped the growth of new goals. The myth taught chaos is often exacerbated when fought without understanding. The third test was the Ceryneian slang, the sacred creature of Artemis. It was not strength that mattered, but patience. Heracles pursued her for a year. This feat is rarely mentioned in detail, but it shows the important side of the hero. Sometimes greatness requires no blow. Excerpts. Then came the Aramanth weave, cleaning of the Avgiv stables, the Stymphalian birds. Every deed was not just a defeat of the monster, but a victory over a certain kind of chaos, the mud, fear, proud, uncontrollability, especially. Surprising is the feat with the Avgiv stables, instead of working for years by hand. Heracles changed the course of rivers. This is one of the myth's most important points. True strength is not just muscles, but also the ability to see the solution differently later. He had to tame the Cretan bull, steal the horses of Diomed, get the belt of Hippolyte, and each time the world grew wider. Hercules' exploits have ceased to be local tasks. They became a journey through the entire mythological world. But one of the most mysterious things is steel. The latest challenges. Heseptapples are golden fruits, associated with the secret of immortality, and especially Cerberus, the three-headed dog of the underworld. To complete the journey, Heracles had to descend into the kingdom of Hades and come back. It's incredibly symbolic. His story begins with the fight against foreign beasts, but ends with a journey to the depths of death. Hercules is not just facing a monster with the boundary of human existence, and he returns, so he is not only the strongest, but also to those who have passed through the very darkness. Why have Heracles' exploits become so important? Because these are not just tales of power. This is a human development map. The lion is fear. Hydra is a growing problem. The stables are neglected. Cerberus, the fear of death. Each challenge can be understood as an inner battle. That's why Heracles is more than a hero. He is the archetype of overcoming, but not even his life was free from pain after his exploits. His fate remained difficult. The test has not ended completely, and the ending is associated with agony, error, and liberation through fire in the end. The mortal part of Hercules has gone, and the divine ascended to Olympus. Thus he became one of the few heroes who had gone from mortal suffering to immortality. This makes his myth especially important. Hercules was not born perfect. He was wrong. I suffered, but he kept going. And perhaps that is why his image has survived millennia. When a person faces seemingly impossible challenges, when life requires strength, when the problems multiply like the heads of Hydrus, an ancient memory still lives in culture. There is a way through the impossible, step by step, feat after feat, and even the greatest monsters can be defeated when the night is quiet, when the ancient constellations of Greece twinkle above the earth. One can almost imagine a figure in a lion's skin with a doublet and an unyielding will. Hero who shows power is not the absence of fear. Power is a forward movement.